Hi, everybody. I hope everyone's doing well and enjoying this August weather. Actually, September weather. Uh, Hopefully, things clear up a little bit and we can look towards getting a little bit more together in next year. But in the meantime, hopefully, everyone is doing okay. Tonight, we have a question from Barbara Newport here in Ottawa. And it's depending on your belief system, this one is a very broad question. What is a soul infused personality? That's a really big dilemma. First of all, if you look at things from one perspective, the perspective of linking up and using energy for your own purposes, and that could constitute a sense of loving, in a kind of a way that loving that you or energy that you use for your engagement with life, you use in a relationship with how you believe, how you think things should be, how you want them to be, and why you want them to be, and you continually validate all of that stuff. And that, in a kind of a way, is using love or energy for a purpose. When you start talking about soul, you start talking about something that is very abstract. At the same time, you can have experiences that don't seem to be abstract at all. They seem to be quite uniquely, profoundly expressant. And what does that mean? It means having experiences that have really basically nothing to do with your wishes, wants, and desires in life. So when you talk about soul infusion, you can look at it from a psychological point of view. And I'm afraid since you happen to have a personality, and as all of us do, that is part of it. And also, it's a trap. All of us want to be valued and validated based on what we think and believe things should be like in ourselves and in the world. So the trap is that the personality can copy with a kind of innuendo the kind of thoughts that you might think soul might have and the way of expressing them in your own mind. So you get to think as a personality that any thoughts that you have in your mind are yours or a higher state. It's a profoundly interesting definition, but it's not necessarily real at all. Unfortunately, all of us have had experiences with thoughts that seem to align with how our personality engages with a whole field of life. Doesn't matter what it is, actually. And there's a parlance that goes with it. And that parlance is my higher self told me that this is this and that should be this. This is very difficult to engage with differently than that, I suppose, when you have these thoughts in your own head. You don't even consider that they might be your own thoughts or the thoughts of an alignment with a state that or a state of engagement with other beings that may not have your best interest in mind. The astral plane is filled with all kinds of things, including you, including me, including everybody. So it's a dilemma, this concept of soul. Carl Jung tried to get around it. He's a psychologist, a Swiss psychologist, tried to get around it by talking about individuation, which was the cultivation of a personality in its maturity to gain access to a collective or a higher state that would enable an individual to become linked with a different level of consciousness than is already linked up with from your birth and in your particular construction, whoever it is, whoever it may be. And this is very difficult because it causes a dilemma. People play games with themselves without knowing they're playing games with themselves. And this has always been a difficulty. And because you link up with alignments to what you believe and what you think needs to be so. Soul structure doesn't operate that way, from my perspective. It operates almost like a teaching measure in a kind of a way, helping you to move forward beyond where you are in your personalities, particular striations or beliefs that seem to be perfectly true and can't be anything else. Thinking beyond the self, the personalized constructed self, which you spend a lot of time protecting, is not easy for anyone. Although the verbiage that goes with that is, this can't be my way of thinking, it has to be the right way of thinking. This kind of thing, which is normal for us. But that kind of thinking isn't the kind of thing that the soul plays with naturally or normally. It usually speaks in modes of abstract, often, because we interpret everything and anything based on an alignment and a self-protection that goes along with that alignment with how we believe things should be. This is really important to use in any concept. I don't care whose it is, mine, anybody else's, don't care who it is. So it puts a little bit of pressure on the personality to reconsider its stances in terms of how it believes life should be like. And that means 8 billion people have the opportunity to do that. But unfortunately, we have practiced more often maintaining legitimately how we believe life should be, and we structurally defend it so that nothing else can get in, we think, to change it. And actually, we don't often even think about that. That's like a reflexive reaction. It occurs. And this is not considered negative from the soul's point of view. What is it considered? It's a position and place where you feel comforted by yourself for a purpose purpose that relates to the definitions and images that you've already constructed in your life based on copying how you think life should be from others, as well as firm belief in your particular routine, that is how you see the world, and no one else's. But you're affected by everybody out there, and it's not considered, you don't consider that you're affected by everyone. From a chakra point of view, energy point of view, this is a considerable engagement. If you look at words, first of all, before the chakras, then you will look at definitions that are written or spoken about based on what you believe should be true if you figured everything out right. You didn't even have to figure it out. You just reflexively respond to it. Okay. Others say this, therefore that makes sense, and I believe that generally that should be. Okay, well, it's fine. Soul does not look at that from a negative point of view. It looks at it like, oh, that's where you are. Okay, that's legitimate. Okay, let's work from there. Personality says, this is what I am, that's how it will be, and that's it. Says it in a moderately nice way sometimes, not so nice other times. But that's the personality, and that's the structure and the form that we use on these planes for a purpose that relates to these planes. So we're looking at now, we're attempting to look at it from a chakra point of view. Well, the base chakra, the gonad center, the root center, the solar plexus, teams up and has been using energy from these major centers for the purpose of engaging and constructing a personality. They team up together. If you open even slightly a center beyond the base centers, and many of us do have slight openings beyond the base centers, then what begins to occur is the personalization that has occurred from these three base survival centers in a certain state related to survival, because they can go beyond that. They're cued to personalize any new engagement with other centers that occur. It's a cue. They're set up that way. So that slowly you begin to realize that you're a form here living on these planes. Ultimately, that soul structure is trying to help you to open up more beyond what you believe currently, so that you can understand the world differently than you could before. Well, the personality hijacks that concept. Normal to do that. Not negative in any way. Sometimes not so positive, but that's not the business of us. Because the soul is trying to get us to open to a point where we could be infused by an energy higher than we can normally handle, and therefore be helpful to others in their opening, continued opening. This is hard to understand. In our world, we tend to legitimize individuals who have some opening, unless they're really quiet about it. if you begin to do some teaching, you run a risk of having this happen. If you don't teach, you run a risk of having these things happen because you legitimize your own orientation, your own personality's survival constructs, which basically builds a wall so that you can change, but not very fast, because you're constantly taking credit for the relationship that you have with your own self-interest. No negation is involved with that. That's part of the development of an individual's personality. And if you can begin to think about that a little bit, all you have to do is engage with another individual for a short period of time. And you'll see automatically the need to have an idea coming from you valued. And the reverse is also true. This is part of the rudimentary nature of our relationship with an engagement with the learning process. The next step, of course, would be to see that you're doing that and to pull back and begin to, you could say, be a witness to it. Many belief systems talk about that. Or watch it for a purpose of not necessarily agreeing with you. You're not trained to do that. You're trained to protect how you believe things should be from your perspective, because that's what the whole world has been training you to do, so that you can make a mark in the history of your life and be recognized and remembered in life. Soul's not interested in that stuff. It's more interested in constructing a system that enables the individual involved to be of help to itself and to others, and to understand that there is a connection with the meaning of life involved with this. Wow. That may be fundamental from some people's point of view, but from most people's point of view, the individual personality, the identity, the name of that individual is theoretically necessarily important so that it can be remembered, never mind anything else. And you would beg boron steel to have that memory accentuated for the purpose of feeling better within yourself. There is no negation in this. This is just how we are. That soul link, as energies begin to open or centers begin to open above the diaphragm, above the base centers that are really pivotal and important in our relationship with life, to help us to live on these planes and survive and function. Even that can be miscued. The need to be special in this world has always been touted. But the definition of special is, oh boy, tremendously different from almost person to person. This isn't, again, such a normal thing. So if a particular center begins to open, and let's talk about the throat center, because boy, it has a strong relationship with the brow, and the gonad center, which has a relationship with the root center, which demands emotional protection. Wow, we're kind of complicated, but fine. if the throat center begins to open, its obligation, its job, is to reach into another state so that the personalizations of the gonad center, root and solar plexus, begin to grow. So you begin, in its link with the brow, slowly to see. You can say 200 words, and you say to it, I don't think I agree with those last 200 words. In our normal personality, you don't do that. You say, I totally agree with the last 200 words. And if you don't agree with it, you're bad. This is how we do things. This is where we are in our world. So when you talk about soul infusion, we're talking about basic theory. And that stuns us. It's shocking. I remember a fellow asking me a simple question. Mr. Chapman, my name, Ron, if I'm a mathematician or a physics or involved with physics and I come up with a theory, I come up with a theory. And I'm very creative. I have these things pop into my mind. Then are they mine? Or are they coming from somewhere else? I said, well, it's a good question. It's kind of a strange question, but it's a good question. After all, it is your mind, of course. Yeah, and he said, yeah, but also pardon my mouth, the crap that's in my head too sometimes. I look at it and I can't believe that's going through my mind. Well, I said, believe it. Because it's in the nature of the world to have all kinds of things in the world at these levels. Some of that stuff flies through your mind. Some of it you have an alignment with, and you don't even know it. Some of it comes out of nowhere. But no matter what, you're going to call it yours because it's your head. But you don't have to call it yours. You can begin to call it stuff. I don't necessarily agree with that. If it aligns with you, you're in a lot of trouble. You're going to agree with it. Even if it's quirky, even if it's strange. But if it aligns, and whatever you focus on, you'll have alignment with. You know what I mean? You speak about things in a kind of a way, and then suddenly information on that level is at your beck and call. You're thinking about it. It's like as if sounds weird, like as if you're in alignment with a certain level of engagement. And there is a lot of ideas out there about spiritual stuff, about material stuff, about how you should be and how you shouldn't be. Rights and wrongs of the world are huge. And they're there sometimes for really good reasons. Sometimes not so much. Because we do things to legitimize how we think. And it happens everywhere. But here you go. If you're not thinking and wondering and curious, you accept this stuff that operates into your head as very important. Well, it's not always important. Even if it aligns with you, you could use it to have second thoughts about what you're doing, why you're doing it, And this is very difficult. It's very hard on the person. But you're attempting to be honest with yourself. It might turn your hair gray. And this is just age stuff, I'm sure. But even if it does, maybe it's important that it's okay that a few gray hairs come out. Our fundamental responses are usually caring responses for us and how we see the world. We're great comforters, using our intensity, our expressions to seek the validation of ourselves by others. It can happen. If you know it can happen, then you're trying to be honest with yourself. Be that. Being an interested person in where you're going and how you see the world, not necessarily just accepting it, is of great value in that seeking of relating to a higher state. Because your way of seeing the world can be interpreted by you as a soul level, and it isn't necessarily soul. That soul level is quite interesting. It knows the ins and outs of you, it seems, and will link up with you where you are so you can see where you are. Not to align with you and say you're really great and wonderful, and you are. And you're always right, or you're always wrong. And you are sometimes right and sometimes not so right. But the beginning of allowing yourself not necessarily to agree with what's going on in your own head is of great value to you. Same is true in relationship to emotion. If you measure your responses to something, then you can ask questions within yourself of why you are responding in the way you are. And most times, you're responding based on your upbringing. And you want to be like the people who brought you up, or your version of them. And now that you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, whoever, whatever, you would not consider them as much of value anymore because now you're an adult and you've figured it all out. Not real, but it is where you are. But I would caution you not to worry about that. Just see it, because the worry brings on more worry. That's where your focus is. If you see it and say, okay, I'm sometimes like that. I would prefer not to be, but I am. Let me see if I can soften that down. You're now focusing on softening it down and trying to understand differently than what you believe you normally do or how you normally do understand things. And going slow with this is really important because it instigates a movement in your mind in your emotions, quite physically even, where you're attempting to revise, and the attention you spend on it, if you slow it down, it will be more valuable to you because it will hold longer, because you will be thinking of it deeper or attending to it differently than the reflex action that is already involved with the, let's say, a preemptive occupation, which all of us have. I think that is an important thing to remember when you're dealing with these chakras, because as those centers open a little bit more, the upper centers open a little bit more, you're giving more energy to your base centers. And what you do with that more energy will be, or initially at least, kind of aligning with the contract you already have built within yourself to validate a certain way of being, because you have thought that it was very important and there was no other way to be. This is normal stuff in growing. That's why so many folks in all religious backgrounds and philosophical backgrounds have spent so much time focusing on good works, writings, interpretations, um, trying to make sense of something deeper than what they're already engrossed with. That means they're bending their attention away from an automatic knowing, an automatic determination to maintain the natural structure that's been constructed since their birth. This is not an easy way to engage with life, because most responses we take for granted. This is a response, that response is valid, and it's my response, and I'm responding that way for a real good reason, and therefore that validates me, and I am the one who is, my view is more right. That can be taken to an extreme, and often is, because it's self-protective. Or it can be judged to extreme because you're not open to broadening out. And you're used to expressing it externally in a manner that does not align with the soul. It aligns with the focus of an individual's personality, the way they have been before, without their knowledge most of the time. And that's the other part. The soul actually tries to get you to see with awareness, with understanding, and with respect, that what you are involved with as a human being is the opportunity to engage with many levels while remaining focused on these levels. So every thought that comes into a person's mind, or conversation, you can hear the conversations that come into your mind. And being pretty straight here, they're not always valuable, true. They're not even, if you don't think about them and you just accept them, they may not even be helpful to you. It's a dilemma because this whole mental and emotional planes, worlds, are fundamentally filled with expression from those who can leave their body, like some of us have done, some of you have done, in the dream world or in the real world. This one, relatively real. And attempt to influence others. This is not a soul-oriented being, but it is more a matter-oriented being with honest presenting of the self or the ideas based on an individual who believes that this is the way to think and do things. This is a difficult thing to explain, let alone a difficult concept to put across or even believe in. But there are many ideas out there, and you would much prefer your own. This is the norm of a personality growing. If you can be okay with that, in other words, you may not always be right. And make a bond with yourself. When you find out that you're not, or see that there's some doubt, tell yourself it. Speak to you. Don't hold back. You'll do that anyway because that's the personality's way of engaging with life. Use it in a constructive way, positive. And when you do that, you're beginning to engage with that soul structure. The openings of other centers will hold you in positions related to the personality so that you can learn from it. And I'm talking about the personality and its way of engaging with others so that you begin to understand that others are similar to you, if not very much the same. And your interpretation as theirs is often related to you maintaining yourself as the individual who should be listened to, because that is the nature of how you were trained. It's annoying. Consider it. It's a possibility. If you do this, that energy will draw your attention to it, not the dialogue, the energy, that flow, that soul structure will help you in ways that relate to you observing life and seeing it differently. And differently is not negation. Neither is it always super in agreement. It's in a place that is trying to help you cultivate a link beyond what you've already cultivated as a personality. For me, this sounds pretty darn abstract from time to time. But when you begin to live it, the abstraction becomes concerning because you don't always know perfectly exactly what is valuable. As a personality, it's easier. A personality that already has made up their mind, you're in agreement with yourself all the time. That makes it easier. Understanding is not an easy road, but learning within, experiencing within, is the soul's road, higher state road. And it affects not only the emotional disposition, but it affects the mind and the body. Read all kinds of stuff. Just remember, it's not only working in spiritual domains, it's working in matter domains as well. And in our look at the world, Barbara, when we look at the world, there's all kinds of reactions in relationship to looking at the world right away. That's personality stuff. It's okay. You can pretty well understand that you will have an opinion about almost anything. So will everybody. You're not alone. And that opinion is where you are. And you'll want to stay right there. That is the nature of the personality. In a nanosecond, in a soul link for a second or two, you'll forget about everything that's really important to you and be in a position of relationship with something inside. That you may not understand or doesn't make any sense. You're filled with a sense of what the heck is happening to me? Often called awe in some cases. I notice there was a question about awe from Carol, which I'll get to in a while. But you're filled with a sense of, I have no idea what's going on. And the personality is the thing talking. Can be very uncomfortable. Be filled with tremendous levels of caring, loving. And nobody's around and it's not focused on anybody. It's focused within you. And the personality hasn't got a clue why it's happening, even what's happening. And it has an effect on the personality. It's subtle. You may not look exactly at things the same way as you did yesterday. And you'll fight back and determine that you have to look at things the way you did before. And you will. But slowly, that'll broaden out and you'll render a kind of sense that is slightly different than you had yesterday over a little while. It can make you feel uncomfortable physically. Emotionally, it can stimulate the defenses like crazy, or it can validate anything and everything so that you're diverted from actually noticing where the changes are going to come from or come to. That sounds pretty weird. But in fact, It's all there to help us to see what's going on inside. And it touches your heart. And the heart is often focused on the importance of the individual in its early stages and the comfort that that gives us and the nature of how valuable you are. You're 100% valuable without that sense. But without that sense happening, we feel uncomfortable. So it doesn't annihilate it for quite a long time. It doesn't annihilate it, it just slips away more often. And you feel the sense of being loved and the sense of a love passing in you and through you. It's really difficult to understand. It has nothing to do with personalization at all. So as you can see, this is not so simple a question. You can make it very simple. Personally define it the way you want, and that's it. And you can live like that for 50 years, 100 years. Another time coming, it'll be okay. There's no negation attached to it. But you can also engage with it from time to time. And it will help you shift a bit subtly. And then you'll notice some things are not quite the same. I used to think this way, but not as quite as much anymore. Your personality can even play with that statement. Oh, now I'm like this and I'm like that. And this is really. We are fantastically flexible and able in our personalities to make no adjustments whatsoever. And it will be completely unknown to us because the acting as if will become even stronger because that makes us feel more comfortable. Is it bad? No, don't think so. It's just part of a movement towards understanding deeper. Just we can't see it yet. Will it help eventually? Absolutely, from my perspective, I think it will. So be patient with others. If, I've always been curious about subtle, tiny little hints that occur in a personality about how we individually function for tremendously comforting reasons. I think without that, if we grew too quickly, unless we're ready for something of that nature, it would be extremely disconcerting for us because nothing would make sense. So that we have these moments of making sense, and they are rat-a-tat-tat, really fast. Personality enjoys that. Makes itself feel really acclaimed, important. And if it does, that's where we are right there. In a moment. We're not always there. But we need it to be there in that second. For the reason that becomes a little bit obvious that we care for ourselves in that moment. And we somehow know that that way of being right then is the only option for us. I think it's quite possible that that soul link is that for some reason it's helping us in the idea that we don't have to just explode our relationship and make our personalities disappear. That's not the issue. It never has been, in my opinion. But the linking up of a deeper level of energy as these centers open. And remember, the centers can open and you can still be attached to your personality and they will play out. You will be the way you are, just emphasized more until you catch the emphasis and start learning from you. And then selectively, little by little, you might allow yourself to recognize the attention of you being turned from one thing to another, either through dreams or through personal insight, or something a person, a stranger on the street, says to himself or herself while passing, and you think they're talking to you. And they may be. That person may be in alignment with you in a place, just a small little place in them, in you, that is the next place to take a look at. Gently, respectfully, kindly, learning and doing your best to see how it works out. These are fundamental things that we may or may not have ever learned in our early development. But no one ever told us that when we grow up, we'll begin to grow up again. And in doing that, that means we're willing to open and learn more beyond what we've decided is the absolute perfect place to be as an adult in our world. We start learning again, but this time with great respect for the idea of what we know, but also what we don't know. And letting the walls come down a little bit internally so that you can see what's going on inside yourself while you're engaging with others, perhaps, but also when you're engaging with you. So you understand you better and you begin to learn again. I wish you well with that. I hope that works for everybody, including myself, and continues to work. So I think we're going to meditate now. Barbara, I wrote some other stuff down, but I think that's enough for that question. And we're going to meditate, and I wish you all really a really good September. And we'll talk to you next Thursday, hopefully. Bye for now.
And now we'll just begin to do the balancing and grounding. And have a good evening.